think tomorrow is week 7 of quarantine. Isn't that crazy?
That's crazy.
That is a fucking long time. Today was an amazing episode. We have someone that a lot of you might be familiar with. If you don't, especially if you're in the CrossFit world, you definitely have heard of who we're talking to today. Before we get into it, if you guys like this episode, you like the information that we have for you, give us a thumbs up, share it with your friends. Roy, let's get into it. Who did we talk to? And we're going to punch him in.
Today's guest is Nick Shaw, owner and founder of RP Strength, or one of them. And if you are looking to get swole or get lean, he's your guy.
Yeah. So anyone that is not familiar, RP Strength is a template-based app. We talk about a bunch of it in the episodes today, but they have an app, they have templates, they have workout templates, and they've been doing it for a very long time.
Yeah, it's all evidence-based. So it's all about like they've taken all these people and it's worked on so many people, and they used to do it just on themselves. And then we also did some myth busting during this, what I think is it's really cool. So all those things you kind of hear on Instagram and social media, that's like nonstop, eat this, don't eat this, apple cider vinegar, we kind of put either a wash on it or a thumbs up on it.
Awesome. Well, hey, let's get this episode started. Again, if you guys liked it, subscribe, share with your friends. With that being said, let's get into it.
The Sweat Collective.
Taking your blood will also reinforce the fact that the little things in life matter.
If you're going to get a new result, you're going to have to get new action.
You got to get out there and be like, oh, this hurts. This hurts real fucking bad. I'm saying start to learn the mind is powerful. It's powerful, man.
All right, so today we are here with Nick from RP Strength. Nick, thank you so much for coming to talk to us. I know you're busy over there, but definitely have a lot of information that we would love to talk to you about.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So for the people that don't really know you, can you just quickly give a little bit of background of your story, how you got to RP and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, sure. Do you want like the long-winded version or sort of like an abbreviated summary?
Let's do it. Let's do a summary.
Give us like 5 minutes.
Okay, yeah, sure. So I grew up in Michigan, born and raised in Michigan. I went to school at University of Michigan, and I was sort of always an avid fitness enthusiast in high school. So did a lot of sports, ran, and was sort of like a gym rat, always lifting and whatnot. So just loved the idea of, hey, if I do a lot of hard work, by training, whatever that training is, running, lifting, I would get better. And I was enamored with this idea. And so I kept lifting through college, and sort of completely coincidental, I met a guy at the Michigan Student Weight Room, Dr. Mike Isertel, who's my colleague, co-founder of RP with me. And we started lifting together. He convinced me to try a powerlifting meet. And I was hooked because I had stopped competing after high school, and that sort of funneled me into this new area, like bodybuilding, powerlifting. So he got me into that. We both became personal trainers in New York City after we graduated. We're getting pretty hardcore into like bodybuilding and powerlifting and all that. And it was pretty cool because we kept sort of tinkering with ourselves and our own like diet and training philosophies, methodologies, and constantly refining things. And that was pretty cool. And so he left to go get his PhD at East Tennessee State University, which is really well-known program throughout the U.S. for sport physiology. So if you want to know about sport performance and stuff, that's really kind of where you go in the U.S. So he went there. It was awesome. He learned a lot. And again, we kept refining things on ourselves, close friends. And eventually we sort of decided to start RP. Never thought it would become something, I guess, what it is today. It was just, hey, we like training people. And again, I was a personal trainer in New York City. He was training people online because he was in school, and we just kept sort of referring people back and forth to one another. And we're like, well, why don't we just start a business and try to do this online? This was like 2012. So somewhat, I guess, fairly early in the online training scene.
Yeah.
Now I guess everyone does. Yeah, so it's totally different now. I don't even think Instagram was a thing then, or like maybe it was just,
I think it was like right at the beginning of it. Yeah.
Something like that.
Was it just like passed on from person to person, like overheard, or how did you get the word out?
Yeah, exactly. No, this was Facebook when like Facebook was actually a fun place to be around and like everyone liked being on it. Again, you would get referred like a friend of a friend, of course. They would get really good results and be like, hey, can we share this online? And so we would, and people would see that, their friends, because that was at the time when Facebook, like you post something and people actually see it. Like now they don't see anything. Right. Like they basically funnel you to like the same 3 people. Like anytime you like someone's stuff, like that's all you're going to see for the next 6 months. You're like, okay.
Then it shows up on your Amazon.
Totally, yeah. And then like, it's like at your door the next day. You're just like, whoa, what's going on here? But yeah, that was really it. And it sort of morphed over time to helping more and more people. And then we started bringing on other coaches that my colleague Mike went to school with. So like these were other people getting their PhDs and stuff. And I guess like 2014, we decided to do an ebook. We partnered with Chad Wesley Smith at Juggernaut. Do you guys know who that is?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, very cool, very cool. And we actually didn't even sell it on the RP site. We sold it through Juggernaut only. And it kind of, again, this was sort of this eye-opener that, hey, this is really cool. We can sell products instead of services, and it allows us to help more people. So that kind of morphed into the idea of the diet templates. Those were very successful in like 2015. So it's actually been over 5 years since we had those, which seems like a real long time. But
yeah. I mean, I've been using your app for the past, I think I started using it. I mean, I remember seeing you guys, you had a tent at the Rogue Invitational. That's kind of where me and Roy got a chance to put our hands on the app. And after that, I was using it for a while. And the app obviously definitely makes it a lot easier to use. I played around with the templates a little bit, but for me, I'm a very visual data person that needs an app. So having that app definitely made a huge difference for me.
Totally. That's awesome to hear. And so, yeah, it's just like the ebook sort of morphed into templates, and then the templates eventually over time morphed into the app. And, over time, technology is going to win out. So the analogy that our main customer service guy, Jacob, made was the templates are sort of like a paper map, right? So imagine 20 years ago, I don't know when GPS came out, you have to get out this big paper map and you unfold it and you have to look at all the roads and sort of figure it out on your own. I mean, all the information's there. It works. Right. You can do it. And then you compare it to something like GPS, which is hey, in half a mile, turn left here. You're like, oh, okay, this is awesome. Yeah. So it's kind of that idea where it's a similar approach as the templates, but it literally helps guide you step by step through the process. And at the end of the day, most of the time, that's what people want. They want to kind of go on autopilot and just be like, hey, I have these cool goals that I want to reach. I'm not 100% sure how to get there. I need some help. I need someone to tell me what to do. And the app's really good at that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I had the templates around 2015, 2016, and I know that.
Oh, thank you, man. We appreciate that. You're like an OG.
Yeah, right. But I do remember it was kind of man, thank God that I'm somewhat an intelligent person, because it's a lot of mental work, internally when I'm dealing with the sheet, but also externally as I'm trying to break down my food and stuff like that. So I think that knowing that you guys have this app now is incredible, because I think it makes them way more accessible to, I would assume that you probably got a lot of nerdy bodybuilder guys, but maybe not so much anymore.
Yeah, sometimes. So that's interesting. Sometimes the people that know the most, are really hardcore kind of bodybuilder types, they want a bit more flexibility, because they sort of have the knowledge that, they're like, oh, well.
How to flex around it.
Totally. This meal says have 50 grams of carbs. Well, I might actually only want 40 and I want to move them around or something. Mm-hmm. And all that stuff's actually coming in the app to be a bit more flexible. I don't know when this podcast will air exactly, but before too long, in the very near-term future, there's going to be a lot of flexibility where you can sort of move your meal times around and stuff. So, again, given the whole COVID situation, if you got night shifts or first responders or anything like that, you can sort of play around with that and move it around. And that's just going to allow more flexibility. And again, because that's really, I guess right now, the only, critique of the app is it's a bit more rigid, which is really interesting, because the app's supposed to be your diet coach. And so people are like, oh, I just want to, track my macros, or I want to input my own stuff. And it's okay, well.
Wrong app.
Yeah.
Right. It's the wrong app. Did you read the App Store description?
Go get the free app.
Well, totally. Like, just go use MyFitnessPal. I mean,
Yeah.
MyFitnessPal is just a food diary, right? Like, you just
Right.
log whatever you want. Like, they don't care what you're eating. But our app's like, no. Like, we want you to try to time things a little bit and, sort of eat higher quality foods because it's going to help you reach your specific goals. And so it's a bit more of a coach than just, oh, hey, dear diary, I ate 3 eggs at, something like that. So.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about like I won't say like the science of it, but like give us like a brief idea of like how you came into developing these templates. Like what is some of the science behind it? Like the approach that you use, why is it so successful? Because like, I know you guys have like an Instagram of just like success stories, and there's thousands and thousands of success stories. So like, why is your approach so successful?
So here's this really crazy and wild idea. And I'm going to throw it out there, and you guys let me know if I am crazy. It's just taking an evidence-based approach, sort of compiling everything that works, because there's so much misinformation out there when it comes to diet, nutrition, and training. Like, I mean, you could spend years just looking through Google and just be like, some people will say, hey, you can't eat protein, you can't eat carbs, you can't eat fat. And then at some point, you're just like, well, what the heck do I eat? It's not really clear. So again, like that's why we have all these really smart people at RP, much smarter than myself, of course. They sort of look through all that and they essentially lay out like, hey, here are these top priorities. Here's what you need to focus on the most. And if you do that, again, our aim is to simplify things as much as we can. And so there's a trade-off there a little bit. If you're a super high-level athlete, well, you need a little more precision. If you are just sort of normal gym goer that trains 3-4 times a week for an hour, excuse me, you can probably be okay with not being super precise. But at the end of the day, you just want to try to simplify things as much as possible. And so like it's the whole simplification process of all this, research and evidence out there. We'll kind of sift through that and just find the stuff that has been shown to be the most important, what actually works. So people are spending more time doing the things that matter the most versus focusing on these really minor, small details. I'm sure you guys have seen this before. Maybe you'll have a client or something. They're like, "Yeah, I'm ready to lose weight. What's the best supplement to take?" And you're like,
right.
Well, okay, it doesn't really work like that. I mean, you can take some supplements, of course, but you're sort of missing this bigger picture. And so real quick, the nutritional priorities, so calorie balance is going to be really important. So if you want to lose weight, you have to eat less over time. Inverse would apply if you want to gain weight, of course. After that, you have sort of your macronutrients. So how much protein, carbs, and fat should I be eating? And like just between those two, you're looking at the vast majority of the percentage of diet success right there. So again, it's sort of focusing on those first two things because those are the most important. Do you guys... I'm sure you've had clients or something like this where, they'll walk in. Do you have someone trying to do snatch on day one?
No.
I mean,
right. I mean,
there's usually a guy that's trying.
Sure. Like for most people, most of the time, that's not the case, especially for totally like someone that doesn't really know what they're doing. You're not like, hey, snatch. Because I mean, I got to be honest, I've been lifting for like, I don't know, 18 years or something. And like, I can barely snatch. So, again, it's just focusing on the basics. And once you master these sort of fundamental concepts, then you start moving down to the things that matter a little bit, but aren't quite as important. So things like nutrient timing, how many meals should you eat a day, or like maybe timing macronutrients around training. And again, it can sort of enhance your results a little bit, probably more so for people that are at a higher level, training multiple hours a day or multiple sessions a day, something like that. And then like the exact food quality and then supplements. So that's kind of the overall approach. And again, if you just simplify things, so, again, the templates did an okay job of that at simplifying the process, but I mean, I think you nailed it pretty well. Yeah, the information's there, but you got to do a lot of thinking. And let's be honest, sometimes people don't want to think all so much.
Right.
So the app is like, okay, well, let's take that one step further and we're going to do all the math for you. We're going to tell you exactly how much to eat. All you literally have to go in is just pick your favorite foods.
I mean, you guys do so much. I would imagine you guys do so much work on the back end because just reading the templates, I was like, wow, this is a lot of work. And to know that there is an app now that makes it almost like mindless so that it's easy for me to follow. I can't even imagine what it would be like to create a template and then transfer it over into an app so that it's easy for somebody to follow. It's like almost no brainer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I got to be honest. I don't know too much about software development. So again, this is like we've got people much smarter than myself that do all of that. And yeah, you know, sometimes like they'll be chatting and I'm just like,
yeah,
it goes over my head. So software development's a totally fascinating idea and concept. And now I'm getting a bit more familiar with it over time.
Yeah. I was just going to say the one thing that I did notice on the app, which I kind of like, something that I had to get used to a little bit was definitely like the different activity level, right? Like you have light, moderate. I think there was like, you know, a heavy day. So like someone that's just like an everyday gym goer, right? Like doing a CrossFit class, like you guys consider that like a light day, right?
Maybe
it was like 1 hour work.
Sure. Yes. So that's how I like to break it down. So we never thought this would be like a controversial thing in the RP community. It's sort of this, it seems straightforward idea of based on essentially how long, how hard you're working out. So if you're running 100 meters versus if you're running a mile, one guy's going a lot more intense, right? But he's done after 12 seconds, let's say.
Right.
15, whatever that is. Versus the guy that's running a mile is going for 5 or 6 minutes. Well, who's burning more calories? Well, the guy running a mile, right? He's out there doing it for a lot longer. It's not to say that he's working more intensely. It's not an intensity thing because CrossFitters go harder than anybody. Like they're insane, right? I mean, yeah. I dabble in CrossFit a little bit. I mean, I have people that routinely just like smoke me in class and I'm in like decent shape. So like, we're not saying these CrossFitters don't go hard. They go hard, harder than anybody. But at the same time, a typical class, you show up and you know how it goes. You kind of chat for a few minutes and then you're warming up, rolling on the foam roller for a while and do some warm up. And then, you know, maybe you do a strength component for 10, 15 minutes, and then you do a WOD that's, 10 minutes.
Right.
Well, then you're going to cool down and stretch and, chat with the other people at the gym, although now COVID, all gyms are closed. So you're on Zoom calls like this. But again, you compare that to someone, let's say like a bodybuilder who, has their headphones on and like their hoodie on and they just like hate the world and they're in the gym and they're going pretty hard for that full 60 minutes. Well, who's doing more volume? Who's putting in more work? Who's burning more calories? Mm-hmm. It's not a contest of who's going more intensely because we could probably argue either way. It's just, well, who's burning the most calories? And so I like to flip it on people and be like, yeah, if you're just working out an hour, most of the time that's probably a light day. That doesn't mean light intensity. That just means light volume.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. Volume. So that's actually the key thing is just looking at total volume.
It's like the equivalent of calling somebody skinny who's a bodybuilder. It was like, well, I didn't really mean skinny. What I meant to say is you look leaner. Like it's
100%.
Just,
yeah. I've been called that before when I was like sort of competing in bodybuilding. And it's like, whoa.
What do you mean?
Like, skinny? No.
Yeah.
Leaner, yeah, for sure.
Leaner. No, you look light.
So I know Roy had some questions that we're going to ask just to kind of play like a little like fun game around nutrition. Not really a game, but it's, what'd you call it, Roy?
Science or no?
There you go.
Ooh, cool. All right.
All right. So go ahead.
Yeah. So some misconceptions of like some things are pretty like simple, but I think they are floating around in that social media world of fitness.
Man, things aren't so simple anymore because you got people doing all sorts of crazy stuff.
So based on your opinion, your background of doing this for so long, first one is apple cider vinegar will help me lose my body fat.
I don't think that's based on a lot of factual evidence. I'm not really sure how that got started. So again, I always like to look at things, relate them back to the nutritional priorities, right? So you have calorie balance is really important. Does apple cider vinegar really fit into the calorie balance picture at all? And if the answer is not really, then you hopefully are a little skeptical of that and start to think, well, okay, I know the nutritional priorities now. Like here's sort of what matters the most. where does this fit into that picture? And like, maybe that fits in under supplements. Right. So probably not going to do a whole lot. I mean, what do you guys hear? Like, what are the supposed benefits of it? Is it like people say it actually burns fat, or?
I think it's supposed to help with like HCl in the stomach, and like it's a natural probiotic or whatever. So it probably does give you that feeling of lightness. But I mean, there's also people that are like, it cures cancer. Like, so there's like extremes, like everything else online.
That's the confusing part, man.
Yep.
It's like there's these polarizing topics, and you get people that are way over here and way over here on topics. And, for people that don't know, it would be like me walking into a mechanic. Like, hey, I need help with my car. I don't know anything about cars. So maybe one person's like, hey, you got to do X, Y, Z. And one person's like, oh, no, you got to do this. I don't know.
Right.
People that don't know much about nutrition, I'm sure they're just like,
well, I think it's also, you get one person that reads one article that has a bigger voice, so now they're going to like put that article on the internet to all their friends are going to click on, it's like.
Right. So then it's not science-based, it's just based on like, because somebody has a farther reach.
Yeah.
Or they tried it and it worked for them or something,
Right.
Sure. N equals 1. Yeah. That's right. So real quick on the whole evidence-based approach. So typically what works best, right? And so our PhDs on staff. So, I mean, they'll look through meta-analyses of all the literature, right? So like hundreds, thousands of studies potentially. Well, where does all that evidence start to point? And when things start to point in one direction, you can probably be pretty confident that that's the right way to go. Versus, like you guys said, you nailed it. You might have something that is proven with one study. Well, one study is not really all that great. Again, if you have 5 studies, 10 studies, 20, 50 that start to agree with that and point us in one direction or the other, well, then we can be a lot more confident. But one, it's like, man, that could just be a little bit of luck. It could be, can you continually prove that? And that's where sort of the whole like lit reviews, meta-analyses come into play, because those are what matter the most when looking at evidence.
Yeah, love that. Second one is all carbs are created equal. Hashtag if it fits your macros.
If it fits your macros is really appealing to a lot of people, and I think it has a lot of good components to it. So, what's really interesting here, sometimes we get blasted at RP by the if it fits your macros. And we're like, we literally agree with you on 80 to 90% of things. So if you're controlling calorie balance, number one, can you eat like higher glycemic carbs, like fun carbs? Totally. Because if you know the priorities and you know calorie balance, you can totally do that. And then like on the flip side of that, the people that are like food quality is everything, calories don't matter, we get blasted by them too, because like, no, you can't ever eat anything fun. It has to be, paleo or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that's not necessarily true either. It's just really weird how nutrition works in general with how dogmatic different sides are. I guess it's like that with everything in regards to politics and whatever. I mean, that's even crazier, but it's like people love to go to one extreme or the other. And almost always, right, the answer is probably somewhere in the middle.
Right.
So
our piece is like in the middle.
Yeah, I guess. It's just, I mean, sort of where the collective body of evidence points. And so over time, that can shift a little bit. So like a good example of that is early on in those early templates, the workout shake carbs were a lot bigger because we thought at the time that nutrient timing was a lot more important. You really had to get in a lot of carbs around training. But then over time, sort of two things happened. The evidence started to shift away from that. Like it's probably not quite as important. Calorie balance is more important than that. And then 2, we started getting a more diverse crowd of people. So we had less hardcore athletes and more like general population folks, like your typical CrossFitter. And they're like, well, I don't want to do 50 grams of carbs in my workout shake if I'm only going for 45 minutes.
Right.
We're like, yeah, well, you're right. Like you probably shouldn't be doing that. And so because of the 2 of those, we started to shift over time. And like now, we'll get people that use the original templates and then they use the app or something. And in the app, you can even choose not to do a workout shake.
Right.
You don't have to.
Yeah, it gives you the option.
Totally, right? Well, it's not really a bad thing to give people more options.
Mm-hmm.
And so people are like, well, why is that? Like, why do you guys flip flop? Well, it's not really flip flopping. It's just the sort of perceived, I don't even know what I'm looking for here, but like the reason for it sort of shifted over time. It's just not as important.
Well, yeah, that, and you're also just reaching a larger demographic with an app. You know, it's no longer just like you said, you're a hardcore athlete. You're now able to reach such a broader mass that probably most of them shouldn't be drinking an after workout shake.
No, totally. Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. Again, if someone's CrossFit's a great example, right? Because most workouts are an hour. I mean, do you need one for under an hour workout? Probably not. If you care a little bit more about performance, you can totally do it, though. I mean, I've been doing it so long that if I work out and I don't have a workout shake, I'm like, this is weird.
Yeah.
I love the taste of it. So, like, for me, it's a little bit different. But, yeah, you don't have to.
What do you put in your shake? Like, what's your carb?
I'll usually do, again, just like something really simple, like Gatorade powder. Again, you can get one of those big tubs from, Costco or Sam's Club, and it's super cheap. And again, it's like pretty much pure dextrose. You pour that in. Usually I'll use like a Ascent whey protein.
Mm-hmm.
Really good. I like the lemon lime. So if you mix the lemon lime with like a fruit Gatorade, I mean, it's the most delicious thing.
Cool.
Yeah. That's what I usually use, is like a vanilla whey with like an orange like tang or something like that.
Creamsicle, right?
A little creamsicle spritzer.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, number 3. There's no such thing as too much protein.
That's probably not accurate. So, here's the thing with, so again, calorie balance is really important, right? So if we're trying to maintain our weight, we know that we need to eat X amount of calories to maintain our weight, right? And that number is going to fluctuate a little bit, but sort of this, what does a doctor might call the caloric constraint hypothesis. So if you need to maintain your weight, you know that you need to eat X amount of calories. If you go over that amount, your weight's going to start to creep up a little bit. So there's this ceiling of calories you can eat while keeping your body weight stable. Well, what happens if you start to increase one macronutrient? Well, something has to give, right? Because calories can't be infinite.
Right.
Unfortunately, I wish that was, wish we could eat everything that we wanted. So like if you way overeat on protein, what happens is you have to give up carbs or fats if you're trying to maintain your weight. Even more so if you're trying to cut, because calories are even more precious because you're slowly reducing over time. So that one's a really tricky one. There's sort of pros and cons to it. The pros would be eat a little bit more protein. It's a little bit more satiating. So when you're dieting, maybe that's a slight benefit, because the less hungry you can be while dieting is probably going to be better. But again, you're going to have to trade off something. And let's be honest, most people want to trade off carbs or fats. I mean, not really. Those are usually the delicious tasting ones.
Not me.
Totally. Yeah, me either, right?
Number 4 is steady state cardio over HIIT for a lean body.
That's a really good one, man. These are really good questions. So sort of to the extent of my knowledge, again, calorie balance is really important. So I'm sorry, can you repeat that one more time?
I feel like you kind of answered this because you were talking about like the CrossFit workout versus like an extended long-term workout. So like the time duration is actually more reps would be
right.
Wait, say it one more time, Roy. Oh, he froze on us.
No worries. So my question was going to be, we usually get 2 questions that are similar to that. And it's like, do you have to do fasted cardio in the morning to lose fat, or can you do it any time of the day? And then your question was actually steady state versus high intensity interval training. Gotcha. Yeah. I'm so used to hearing the first one that when you said the first part, I was like, oh, okay, he's going to go this way. And that's why I was like, oh, wait, I didn't even say that. So for some people, it matters how much time you have, right? So not everyone can spend an hour on a leisurely walk to burn calories slowly over time. Some people only have 20 minutes, so they might have to really get after it. And in that case, you can do a little bit more HIIT training. So usually one of my colleagues, Dr. James Hoffman, he wrote our recovery book. What he would say on the HIIT training is you might just take a little bit of a hit, pun intended there, of course, on your training, right? Because if you're just really blasting hard cardio intervals, it might just be really hard, take a little bit longer to recovery. So like, let's say if you're squatting the next day, it might be a little bit tougher to squat versus if you're just going out for a walk, like you're walking your dog or something, that's almost certainly not going to impact your weight training.
Yeah, it makes full sense. What's your favorite way of getting your cardio?
I like rowing.
Rowing?
I saw you posted a 10K for time.
Yes.
Recently.
That was today, actually. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So I like to get up and normally I'll row or something just for fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, when I started rowing, like maybe 6 months ago, I was like not good at all. And like now I'm fairly decent. It's kind of funny how that works, right? You do something for long enough and you get better. Yeah.
The next one is quarantine's going to make me lose all my gains.
It sure seems like that, right? And I personally feel for a lot of people out there that are used to hitting the gym really hard and maybe don't have a home gym or very good stuff. So if this would have happened a couple of years ago when I was living in New York City, again, I have 2 small kids, and if you're living in a really small apartment in New York City, I can't imagine what it's like. I mean, I lived in New York City for 6 years, so I don't know what those folks are doing, and man, that's just got to be crazy. It definitely can be harder. I don't think people are going to lose their gains, though. So usually it takes a little, like, you've got to try to really lose muscle if you've been lifting and training for a while. And you can probably do something. So you can grab some light dumbbells, and it might not be ideal. You might not be able to, squat 300 pounds, unless you have a home gym, of course. But can you maybe grab some 15 or 20 pound dumbbells and do some like really high reps, crazy intensity stuff? And maybe you're like doing a bunch of squats and then you're supersetting it with lunges or something like that. You can definitely keep your gains. Again, hopefully the quarantine is going to start to be lifted here in the coming weeks. I think it already is in some places a little bit. And, 4, 6, 8 weeks, maybe up to like 3 months, you're going to be fine. For quarantine for a year, okay, well, then you might have to start worrying a little bit. But.
Yeah, I feel like at this point, it's more about just like maintenance, right? It's like just keep where you're at, write it off as a loss, get back to the 3 months, and get back to it. I'm curious, though, I guess a lot of these like athletes have some type of home gym or they're probably training somewhere, but we had a conversation with an Olympic athlete who does like hurdle sprinting. And he just said, after all this, we're going to find out the athletes that have been continually training and the ones that haven't. So it was just a cool little conversation we had.
Yeah. Can I hop in on that real quick? So there's this, again, polarizing topics, right? People love polarizing stuff. So there's one crowd out there that's like, you don't need to worry about training or whatever, like just worry about mental health. And that's absolutely, true. A lot of people out there just, again, take someone maybe like a nurse or a doctor that's really truly on the front lines, like fighting this. Okay, 100%. Like you need to do whatever you need to do to get by. And that's totally cool. I always like to, play devil's advocate a little bit and say, well, for someone like me, training gives me some semblance of control right now when there's no control in the world. Like I can't do anything really about, what's going on for the most part. But I can control my diet and training, and that gives me some power back where I start to feel better. And so it's like flip side. Some people aren't going to care, and that's okay. Some people, it literally is their purpose, their why. And, it gives them that feeling of control. So I think that's totally cool for those people as well. And whoever that sprinter was, I think nails it, because there's going to be some people that come out of this that it's just been awful for them. And for people that it truly was awful because, they're working on the front lines or impacted economically, that's awful and, feel really bad for them. But if you're someone that's relatively not impacted and you're just slacking off.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I mean, I think like you just said, training gives you control of your life. I think that's like a really important thing for everyone to realize, like anyone that's kind of not looking at training as a way to really develop your mindset and know that you do have control and like you're controlling what you can control.
Yes.
I think that's awesome. I love that.
And you guys provide I saw like you provide a at-home template for working out. That's pretty cheap.
Yeah. So here's the funny thing about that. We had a female version that we released last summer. And because our demographic tends to be more, people that go to the gym and are pretty serious about it, no one really bought it. But again, we had it.
Right.
And then, COVID-19 hit and people are like, I need to train at home. We're like, oh, we have this program. It works. It's just, you just need like a pair of dumbbells, basically, like 10, 15, maybe 20 pounds. And yeah, I mean, it's been working and people are loving it because it gives them structure, and it's really hard because again, like if you only have light weights, your intensity level has to just get blasted. So you're doing really high reps, really short rest breaks, just lots and lots of pain. It's not super fun, but yeah, it's going to work. And that comes back to the question, are you going to lose your gains? Not really, man, because some of that stuff, especially when you're not used to it, in the short term can actually be pretty beneficial.
Right. You might actually come out stronger if you do it for a while and then go back to your regular training.
Yeah, you might actually gain a little bit of muscle because it's this new stimulus that you've never really seen before. And, again, if you're focusing on your nutrition pretty well, you're probably going to be okay.
I know we were talking, Roy, with Akeem, we were talking about a lot of body weight training and going back to like volume, like taking the time to focus on your body weight training could be another just, a good way to get stronger, build more defined muscle rather than just lifting 5 reps on the back squat once, twice a week. Yeah.
Totally.
It's a good time to bust out Murph.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Don't need much equipment for that. I guess you need a place to do pull-ups, but other than that, I mean, you can literally do that anywhere.
Yeah. You can still do like rows somewhere. I saw like CrossFit posted like you put a drape over your door and use that for rows. You just make sure just make sure the door is closed and it's facing you so somebody doesn't open the door.
People are really good at getting creative, different ways to work out. I saw something, this was for USA Triathlon, and it was like a joke video, of course, but sort of how, people are being creative. I think there was this triathlete and they were like laying on a bench or something and they had bands, attached to their arms and they were sort of mimicking swimming. And then, just for fun, the fun part was, someone comes in, like throws a bucket of water on
That's funny.
That reminds me of that video. You ever hear of like Juju? He's like the guy with the crazy hair on Instagram.
Juju move?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, Juju. He has that one video where he throws like a bunch of bands in a squat rack and he's like doing the crazy shit with the bands.
Yeah. Yeah, that guy's crazy. Super strong too.
Yeah.
Like so strong and so mobile, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, we have 2 more for you.
Okay.
Red meat is king for gains.
I don't believe so, but I think red meat is a little bit higher in maybe like the creatine level or something like that. So that's probably, so all these things I think have just like a little hint of truth, and then people tend to run with these things and sort of go way overboard with them. Man, if that were the case, what about old school bodybuilders like Arnold? I mean, they were eating chicken, they were eating tuna. There's lots of good places to get protein. Eggs, whey protein, chicken, fish, beef, turkey. You can eat.
Right.
You can eat all of those. And what happens if you're someone that doesn't like beef? Are you doomed to never make gains? Like, nah.
All right, last one, Roy.
All right, last one. Fasting is overrated.
I would agree with that. Yeah, I would. I would agree with that. So again, it goes back to this like nutrient timing being this little sliver. It's not super important compared to the other priorities. And, I think people just love to run with fads and gimmicks. So here's what I figured out over the years. It took me a while to sort of figure out, like, why are these, like, some of these really trends or whatever, why do they become really popular? Well, calorie balance is king. You need to manipulate that in some way or another to see weight loss and fat loss. Well, how do you do that? The goal is to simplify things as much as possible. So what are really popular diets? Keto. Well, what are you doing? You're cutting out carbs. That's easy for people to do. It's just one step. It's just one thing.
Right.
You don't really need to track. You just cut out one macronutrient group. By default, you are most of the time, unless you're just like slamming olive oil or coconut oil or whatever, you're also lowering your calories. And so it's the whole this correlation, causation. How's that go? Well, you cut out carbs, people start to lose weight, and they lose a lot of water weight at first. So they start looking leaner, they feel leaner, they lose weight, they see it on the scale, they're like, oh my gosh, carbs are terrible. I can never eat carbs again. Well, by default, they're also lowering their calories. Intermittent fasting. Okay, don't eat for 8 hours of the day. You're probably not going to eat as many calories as you would otherwise. So again, you're sort of by default lowering your calories.
Totally.
Is it necessarily doing anything magical? No, not really. But again, all these things start with a little sliver of truth. And then they're just hammered home like this is the thing. And that's not necessarily the case. So intermittent fasting, a lot of people, I don't know about you guys, I don't like to eat a ton in the morning when I wake up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If I had a real job, fortunately I haven't had a real job in like a really long time, but if I had to go to an office or whatever, and I had to get up and like cook eggs or something, that takes a lot of work. I don't want to get up earlier to do that. So, well, boy, just don't eat for a while after you wake up. Nothing too crazy. I always just tell people, well, why not have some like coffee and a protein shake? You get a little protein in, so you don't have to cook.
A little stimulant, ready to go.
That's pretty much what I do. I mean, usually what I do is like if I take a CrossFit class, like a 6 a.m. CrossFit class, I don't eat anything before it, but even afterwards, I just drink like an after workout shake and then just kind of wait till like 10 because I'm not even hungry that early in the morning. So, yeah, I mean, like you said, I think it depends on like people's goals, right? I think if someone's not eating, right? Well, let me ask you this. I heard this. I don't know if it's true. Is Rich Froning doing intermittent fasting now?
Yeah. So, yeah, he does. So I actually helped him. He had some knee injuries. He was dealing with lots of inflammation. And he read that intermittent fasting helps reduce it. Now, is that true? I don't really know if that's true or not. But he was sort of used to not eating in the morning.
Right.
So I want to ask you guys a question. So, if you're coaching someone, whether it's training, whether it's diet, whatever it is, do you want to give somebody something that is perfectly, optimally laid out, and they're not going to follow it very well? Or do you want to meet them in the middle?
Yeah, obviously the middle.
The middle.
Yeah.
Right. And it took me a while to figure that one out too, because sometimes I would work with higher level athletes and I would be like, yes, I'm going to write them the perfect, like, nutritional timing is everything here. They've got like 3 workout shakes a day because they're training so often, and they're just like, I can't follow this. Like, it's just not realistic. That was an eye opener to me. And so essentially what I told Rich is, hey, I totally hear you on that. Let's make some little minor tweaks. So again, we go back to the nutritional priorities. Let's make sure your calories and overall macros are dialed in, and from there, the nutrient timing aspect is going to matter not a ton. So again, he basically just wouldn't eat before their morning session. Like he would drink a little bit, during his workout. So, and I told him this, I'm like, it's not ideal, but again, it's sort of the art of coaching. I'm sure you guys will appreciate that a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
You can tell someone, hey, you have to do X, Y, Z. But if they're not going to do it, you're not helping them. And so you have to meet them in the middle. And that's, it took me a while to figure that one out too, because I was like, well, people are paying me. I want to give them the highest quality service. So I'm going to, dial everything in, cross all the T's, dot all the I's, and it's going to be perfect. Well, in reality, what I was missing was people don't necessarily want perfect. They want something that's going to be pretty dang good, but they can actually stick with in the long run.
especially when dealing with like such a high level athlete. I would imagine like seemingly based on interviews that I've seen, that was already kind of his DNA, that he would not necessarily eat in the morning or forget to eat until like 1, 2, 3 o'clock or whatever. So to change that could actually have a bigger effect than like mentally in his like mental space or whatever. Like I'm like, oh, I got to do all these other things now and change I have breakfast at a certain time. Like it doesn't make sense, when in reality, you're saying right now, like based on your pyramid, the calorie intake is the most important. The macros are important. The timing comes on second. Like, let's focus on those things instead of focusing on changing your whole life.
Yeah, you nailed it. He was notorious about just not eating, honestly, sometimes until late in the afternoon. So we've been working with him for a couple of years now, and that was like one of the first things that we tweaked. And he was sort of shocked at how much food he could eat. And it's not that he was eating more. It's just that he was like, actually eating at set times during the day. And, it worked, because I think the first year we worked with him, this was a year after they lost, or they got second. And then he came back and they all crushed it. And then like he was dealing with the injuries and whatnot. And so he was just trying some different things. He told me that, and I'm like, well, let's just not, like, don't go crazy. Let's just not throw everything up in the air and say, screw it. I was like, well, let's take everything. I'm like, send me your schedule, your sort of preferred window of eating. And I, tweaked what we had originally to accommodate most of that. And I was like, hey, we can do this. Here's what I think is going to be just a little bit better. And I was like, hey, let's add, a workout shake with your first session of the day. And so that way it's sort of this fine line, this balance and trade-off. And, I think it's worked pretty well.
Awesome. Well, hey, I think we're pretty much at like 45 minutes. So I just want to wrap it up with, just because we always just kind of ask the same question everyone at the end. If you could provide everyone with like 3 tips to help with their nutrition, right? Like whatever their goal is, 3 tips that you can kind of like recommend someone to do today that will help them improve their overall nutrition.
Get the RP app.
Yeah.
I'm going to amend my 3 recommendations to include that one as number 3 now. I was thinking in my head, I had the first 2 pretty easily, and I was going to maybe have to stretch for the 3rd one. So thank you for that. That's sort of like one of these softball lobs. You lob that up. And
yeah, right.
Slam dunk that one.
Yeah, totally. So thank you for that. Number 1, I would say set realistic goals. So a lot of people, I've sort of become fascinated with the topic of like self-discipline and self-control and like willpower, and how do people really sort of harness that so they can get more out of themselves. And people have to be careful when they're setting goals. So let's say you're really fired up one day, like you just watched Rich Froning motivational video on YouTube, and you're just like, oh my God, my life is totally going to be different moving forward. And you're just so fired up that you can't wait to get after it. And you're like, I'm going to start the RP Diet app. I'm going to lose 50 pounds in 3 months. Okay, that's great. But let's take that and let's channel that into something a bit more realistic. So it's like, hey, maybe over 3 months, you'll lose 15 to 20 pounds. And then you'll work on maintaining that afterwards. And then you'll maybe cut again after that to get to 50 pounds, maybe over 6 or 9 months. So that's number 1, because people love to, I think there's a technical term for it. It's called the false hope syndrome. So people get really fired up, and then they base their goals off of that state. And then when the hard work actually comes, and they're like, oh crap, I have to work really hard to achieve that goal that I said I was going to last Wednesday when I was, just watched the Rich Froning video.
Yeah.
And so that's something to be really careful about, because a lot of people will get really discouraged early on because they're not reaching those goals. And then it's all or nothing. And for most people, it becomes nothing. And that's just not good. They're going to be discouraged. Maybe they won't even ever come back, or they'll say, hey, screw it. So be really careful about that. That's number 1. Number 2, I would say I might actually go over 3 if that's okay.
That's all right.
I'll try to keep it quick. And you said it perfectly earlier. Focus on the things that you can actually control. So that one's going to be really big. So if you are worried about like the scale not cooperating with you, you can't really control that truly. You might get water weight fluctuations, especially if you're a female. Or, no one's traveling right now, but let's say you were on a flight and you didn't pack any snacks with you, and your flight gets canceled and you're like stuck in the airport. Well, now you only have airport food available to you. So you didn't control the things that you could control. You could have brought snacks with you. You could have had protein bars. You could have had jerky. You could have had ready-to-drink shakes or something like that. Some nuts, some dried fruit, whatever it is. So now the external factors are now becoming more of a problem for you instead of what you could have controlled internally. So that's really big. So focus on things that you can actually control. That's number 2. Number 3, you have to be disciplined.
No.
Yeah, that's actually, that'll be number 4. You have to be disciplined.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care who you are. There are going to be days where you just don't want to do it. And so again, so we have RP Strength podcast. So we actually just had on Maddie Rogers. And so this was something I was asking her. I was like, hey, what do you do on the days where you don't feel like it? And, she gave a pretty good answer. Well, you just got to kind of get through those days. Not every day is going to be PR. Not every day is going to be awesome. There's going to be days where you just feel like crap and you don't necessarily want to do it. Guess what? Like if you really want it, you're going to figure out a way to do it. And so that's where discipline comes in. And so that's really important. And then number 4, of course, as well, just, screw all that. Just get the RP diet in.
That's great.
Yeah. I think what Maddie was saying with discipline, I think a lot of people also get hung up on this idea that they have to give 100% every time they go into the gym. When some days you could just show up, even if you give 70%, you're there. That's that's a win just by itself.
Do you guys know who Jocko Willink is?
Yep. Oh, that's kind of where my head was going when you were talking.
Sure. So, when I'm rowing, I'm usually listening to the Jocko podcast in the morning. And, he had a really good thing on the end of one of his podcasts. It was something about, what do you do on the days where you don't feel like it? Well, you show up. You show up and you just maybe do what you can. And I think that's a really good sentiment for a lot of people. But he also, again, he's got a book called Dichotomies of Leadership. So he's pretty familiar with about, balancing things. And he said, maybe if you do that every day you don't feel well, you're going to be you're not going to do as well. But just show up. And then if you continue to feel like that for a couple of days in a row, then maybe that's time when you take a rest. But maybe not the very first day. Because you might just be, maybe you got into a fight with your spouse or significant other, or nutrition wasn't on point, or you've got young kids and, whatever happened, something like that. And, you might just not be on your A game, but if you can show up, be surprised. I mean, you guys tell me if I'm on the right track here. I've had days where I didn't really feel like it, and then I get into the gym and I feel great.
Absolutely. 100%.
I love that. There's a quote that always pops in my head where Jason Khalipa kind of mentioned, he's like, there are going to be days you're not going to feel like doing it, whether it has to do with your nutrition, your relationship, or whatever. He's like, just do the warm up, and then see from there. He's like, because 9 times out of 10, if you do the warm up, you will probably get in the state of doing what you were supposed to do anyway. So whatever the warm up is for your nutrition, maybe it's you're at the airport and you're buying food or whatever. Maybe you take a quick stop at the Quick Mart and buy the things you would rather consume to make sure that you're in case something happens. So it's the warm up is all the in case stuff, or if you're in a relationship, maybe calling the person that you're supposed to call because something's going down and you don't know what to say, but the warm up piece is just doing the call, So do the warm up, and 9 times out of 10 after that, you'll know what to do.
So Maddie actually echoed that very, very closely. And she said, if there's days she just really doesn't feel like it, she'll just go in and she'll just start stretching. And after the stretching, mobility, warm up, if she's still not feeling it, maybe she'll do her accessory work first. Most of the time, if you get a sweat going,
right,
endorphins start flowing, you're going to feel pretty good. And if you do that, man, I mean, you guys are good. You nailed it. I agree with pretty much everything you guys have said. You just get going, you're probably going to be pretty well off.
Yeah. So do the warm up, go on the RP Strength site, download the app.
Hey man, you heard
rushing it.
And the rest of it will, come through.
You heard it. Hey, you heard it. Who am I to argue with you? I can't argue with that. So.
Awesome. Well, hey, Nick, thank you so much for coming to talk to us. It was really awesome to hear you talk about everything and just hear the science part of it. Science or nah, as Roy would say.
That's good, and I like that.
It was a lot of
guys. Yeah, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Thanks.
Well, hey, enjoy the rest of your day and keep crushing it, man.
Cool. Thank you. Likewise, you too.
Yep. All right. Take care.